I could have flown home, but I thought a drive would, clear my head. I'd finished 4 years in the Marines, for the messiest years of my life. I'd made the mistake of bringing my new wife to California with me and returned from Iraq to find her warming somebody else's bed. The bed in question is of a fellow Marine, someone left on base while I fought and bled for our country. 6 months of staying on base so I could meet with lawyers and finish my divorce, and I was finally out and done. When I told my dad that I was going to rent a car and drive home, he understood. I told him I needed to come back slow so I could clear my head. He told me to drive safe, said take your time. We'll be here when you get back, he said. I took him up on that. I was coming cross country, California to Tennessee, and I was seeing the sights, taking in the local flavor. I decided to make a long, overdue vacation. I did a lot of thinking on that trip. My only mistake was picking that kid up. I was driving through Oklahoma, enjoying the sights and feeling like I could watch the hills and valleys roll by forever, when I saw the kid standing there with his thumb out. He was young, couldn't have been old enough to enlist despite his army coat. It was July, the heat stifling, but he was wearing fatigues and a service jacket that looked antique. A breeze ruffled his hair, pushing it back in a harsh puff that made me think of kids blowing on dandelion fluffs. Maybe it was the jacket, maybe it was the look of naked want on his face, but I pulled up beside him, I rolled the window down. "Hey kid, you need a lift?" He turned his perfect sky blue eyes to me. I'll never forget his words. I sometimes hear them when I'm asleep. "Yeah, I sure do. Can you give me a list of McMahon, mister? I'll thank you if you do." I thought that was a little weird, but I told him to climb in. He did so gladly. The signs told me McMahon was about 30 miles up the road. I expected the kid to chatter like a squirrel the whole time. To my surprise, he was quiet. His eyes closed, his head bowed for the first couple of minutes. It took me a minute to realize he was praying, and when he finished, he sat up, plastered a half daffy grin on his face. "God tell you I was a straight shoot?" I asked, more to break the ice than anything. "He said thank you for your assistance, mister. You'll be greatly rewarded in this kingdom." I nodded, thinking I could use all the help I could get. The farther we drove, the more I began to suspect that something was off about the kid. He stared forward the whole time, his blue eyes on the horizon, his mouth seemed to set an ethereal grin. He wasn't as young as I thought, maybe 18, 19. The jacket had the name Harris stenciled on it. It's covered in patches, too. The kind you get for service. And I was glancing at one on his left breast when I saw the bulge under his coat. I felt a cold shudder run through me as I recognized it. The kid was packing. "You look pretty young for service, kid," I said, trying to dissuade some of the fear. "Your brother give you the jacket? Was he in Iraq like me?" "My dad," the kid said. "He left it to me when he died." "Oh, yeah. Sorry to hear that. Was he in Iraq?" "Gulf War," he said, his voice not matching the grin. "He enlisted before it started. He was there for a couple years after it ended." I nodded. "But bet he had some stories." I was in. I was about to start on one of my sandbox tales, but the kid cut me off suddenly with the last thing I expected. "Do you believe in God, mister?" I blinked. Subject unexpected. "Not really, kid," I answered, being honest. "I'm an atheist. Have been since what happened to me overseas. I think that if there was a God, it's pretty crummy of him to let us live like that." I'd expected a fight, but the kid just nodded. "He forgives you for that. Daddy was like you. Mama said before he went to war, he saw something over there. Bad things. He came back from the war looking for God. He said he had seen some things over there that scared him, made him want to be better. He couldn't do better without some help, so he came back, started looking for a purpose, and he found one. He found a lot of people offering purpose, but only one who delivered. By the time I was born, he was part of the family. I listened politely, not wanting to interrupt the kid, but the way he was talking about his dad's search for God made me a little concerned. It didn't seem like a happy memory. I was born into the family, mister. Father Marcus was our everything, our teacher, our preacher, our second father, and our salvation. He brought lots of people together, lots of lost people, but that wasn't enough. Father Marcus wanted more. He had plans, big plans, and they wouldn't be so good for us. He was quiet for a minute, looking out the glass and seeming lost in thought. I thought again that he had been a kid. He couldn't be out of high school. Maybe it was just whatever was wrong with him. Even though his eyes looked like he was in the worst pain imaginable, he still wore that plastered-on grin that never reached his eyes. He was like a doll with a troubled owner, a doll that smiles through its destruction. When I was 10, Father Marcus told the congregation that the end times were coming. He told them the government was going to come down and take everything that we'd built here, that the devil was set against us and we needed to escape. He told everyone to sell their things, bring the bare minimum, come to a place that he had found. It was a farm on the outskirts of town, a big farm, one that had once been a dairy. They gave him their money so they could secure their paradise, free from anything that the government or the devil or anyone else might do, and came there to start their new lives. We were hopeful this would be our paradise, but it wasn't paradise. In the end, it was a prison. I felt a chill run up my spine as he said that. I wanted to tell him to stop. I didn't want to hear the end of it, but instead I just listened. The kid was hurting, that was clear enough, but his story was so captivating. It was like one of those true crime stories, the ones so bad you just know it has to be true. I kept my eyes on the road and listened, just letting him tell it, already knowing that it wouldn't have a happy ending. We were basically his slaves. We worked in the fields, we kept the big house where he lived, and did his bidding. Father Marcus came down to spit the hellfire every night, pass down new edicts and rules. Men were not permitted in the big house. No one but Father Marcus could lay with a woman, even within a marriage. All children were Father Marcus's children. But his actual children were special. Eventually, he took all the women that he liked up to the house to populate the earth. He took my sister up there with him. I never saw her again. People didn't like it much, but what could they do? Father Marcus was keeping us safe from the apocalypse, right? So we followed his orders until everything fell apart. We rolled into the outskirts of McMahon then, the farms and barns making me think of the place the kid was talking about. I wondered suddenly where we were going and why the kid wanted to go to McMahon so bad. Every mile felt like an eternal march, and I was dreading coming to the end of the journey. Where? I started, but the kid seemed to be expecting the question. Stay on the main road, he said, clearing his throat before going on. Then one day he gathered us all in the barn and told us that the end was near. He told us we needed to prepare ourselves to go, because we were meeting God tonight. He gave us all something to drink, something in a red cup, and his wives dipped out, and we all drank it and went to sleep. Everyone stayed asleep too, except for me. I woke up in the hospital with tubes in my arm, my wrist secured to the bed. The police were there, one of them waiting in the room with me, and they had questions. It turned out they were the ones who had been coming, not God. They had arrived to find everyone dead, fallen around the barn like dolls, but had managed to get there in time to save me. I don't know why I lived while everyone else died, and it ate me up for a long time. Father Marcus my family, everyone was gone, and I'd been left behind. None of my family wanted anything to do with me. My dad had burned a lot of bridges before we went into the family. None of them wanted to take in a moody 16-year-old who'd just been through hell. So I went into the system, going from group home to group home until a couple weeks ago. I clutched the wheel hard, suddenly worried about what we might find in McMahon. The town was coming up now, a nice old brick town that looked downright picturesque. We passed a sign for a new mega church, the Sunrise Gospel House. And there was a smiling old guy beaming down from the front. The kid shot a glare at him and patted his heart, inevitably patting the piece as well. I suddenly wondered who was in McMahon that this kid needed to see. Now, I was watching the TV in the group home, and an ad came up for a church. The church had recently acquired its own network. The pastor of the church was very familiar. He spoke about peace and God's love, but all I could hear was the voice. That voice had told us to drink the juice, go meet God. As I watched him smiling and hugging people, I heard a very different voice in the back of my mind. It was God. It was the real God. And he told me what I had to do. He said I needed to be his sword, and I needed to cleave through the unrighteous from his midst. He patted the gun again, whispering a prayer to God, and my hair stood on the back of my neck as something strong and strange wafted from the kid. In that moment, he felt very righteous. We were well into town now, rolling up the main street. He told me to stop. I dropped the kid off at the light, and he thanked me. He said that he could make it from here. He gave me a real smile, and not the dopey one that he had been wearing the whole way through his sad little tale. And he waved at me. God bless you, mister. I'm off to do his work. Then he was gone. And I sat there, watching him go until someone politely honked behind me and I was forced to roll along. I wasn't sure what to do as I made my way out of town. Did I tell someone? If this pastor had really messed the kid up like that, then maybe he had it coming. Was this really my call to make, though? In the end, I called McMahon Police Department. I told them what I suspected. I told them about the kid and the story he had spilled, but I don't think they took me seriously. The dispatcher seemed like it was going in a little pile of crackpot shit. I felt I'd done my due diligence. I was still thinking about it when I stopped for the night, wondering where the kid was and what he was doing as I drifted off to sleep. I woke up the next day and turned on the news to see that Pastor Michael Wheeler of the Sunrise Gospel House had been shot in front of his congregation. The pastor, someone wanted by the FBI for his alleged connection to several past cults, had been shot by someone from one of his past religious orders. The kid was in custody. But police were already saying he was mentally unwell, and this was likely a retaliation slaying. Police were still looking for a mysterious caller who had tipped them off before the shooting, and they had many questions for that individual. I left Oklahoma as quickly as I could, flinching every time I saw a cop. Now, that was a couple of years ago, and I've never told anyone what happened on that trip. Something that weighs on me since I let that kid out, although I can only imagine that he was right about God blessing me. I came back, I found a job, one that paid well, met the love of my life, settled into wedded bliss fairly easily. It all seemed very easy while it was happening, and I couldn't help but wonder if a little divine direction had something to do with it. Maybe as long as he doesn't point me at his enemies like he did that kid, I suppose suppose we can be square. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or by listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. I know I haven't had as many updates as I would like to have on the channel lately, and things just kind of get really hard with shit that's happening in my family. But hey, I wanted to say thank you so much for being around, thank you so much for still supporting me and for coming back to listen to new stories. If you guys want to get updates anytime that I do upload, then please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Or if you're listening over a podcast, I think it's still a subscribe button or a follow button or whatever happen. Those happen to be. As always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody out there on patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. A very, very big thank you to everybody there, and to especially Jordan Humble, Diana Kraus, King Crab, Calcifer420, Veronica Lynn Lopez, Marlon Chavez, Azazel66603, Ethan Leon, Polaris Prospect X, Blake Rattler, Viceroy Scorn, Samara Lynn, Disciple, SullyMan, Brandon Mendoza, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Brenna LaQueda, Canizales, Smiley the Psychotic, Dante Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, CursepoxPrimarch, Jenna's Pet, Clonable, Kearns, Mike, himbojerry, CrusaderChocobo, Remember the Sun, Estebean, Our Minute Second Time, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Voice of Sand, Ficomel, Melted Lake, Tully Sue, Croconut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hades Nephew, Tommy Walters, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Tristan Pelton, Ball Arms the Rat, The Ginger Bros, Daniel Polson, and Cody Kinchin. To all of you guys there, everybody who's down in the description, and everybody who can just give $1, I want to say thank you to you guys. And if you would like to join this list in the description, head over to patreon.com/MrCreepy. And if you would like to join this list in the description, sweet dreams.